Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. We are now joined by my very good buddy and a man that when I count the things in my life that I'm thankful for, he is always at the top of the list. Yeah, we're colleagues. He's the editor and publisher of the spun.com. In my opinion, the very best sports aggregate where pop culture meets sports. It's really a website. There's nothing, anything like it. And so we're colleagues through that, but over almost nearly 2 decades, we have become terrific friends. And my children know him, love him, and he's been in our home. We've been with him out in New York, and just one of my favorite human beings on the planet, the great Matt Haladik. Matt, good to have you, buddy.
Always a pleasure, and happy Thanksgiving to you and the family.
I know I always tell you this every year, but it's important to me. You do know I'm thankful for you, don't you?
Likewise, buddy. I'm thankful for you always.
All right. We're going to talk about the Raiders today, and we're going to get into a lot of NFL stuff as well. We always do when you're on. But to me, the feeling, when you look at Shedeur, now I have not done the research like I do, and you know I do a ton of it pre-draft. I've not done anywhere close to the amount I'm going to do. So I reserve the right to change. But I've watched a little bit, and next week after um, the Chiefs game, I'm going to get to go celebrate Thanksgiving a little bit late with my family, but I'm going to hopefully watch all of his games this year, look at some things. But in my preliminary work, I've learned some things about him that I really like, and it fits a lot of what Tom Brady likes. He's a guy that now Brady was not the most athletic guy in the world. I don't think anybody would argue that. But Shedeur is not a Baker Mayfield, Michael Vick athletic guy, but but yet he can run, but he is extremely athletic in the pocket. Extremely athletic in the pocket, which is what they want. They want that guy, and I've talked about this for years, that'll stay in that pocket and think pass first, not run first, but he can run. I'm not calling him Patrick Mahomes because they're not the same player, but he has similarities to Patrick, where Patrick was not this way coming into the league, which is pretty interesting to me. Coming into the league, Patrick was more of a run first guy. And Andy Reid did a masterful job of really training him to where he became a stay in the pocket, a run second guy. Shedeur is a run second guy right now. I like that. And I know the interest that is there with Shedeur. It is starting to take, I'm not saying it's there yet, and I reserve the right, but it's starting to take this is a Shedeur Sanders. They've got to get Shedeur type of feel. Again, with all reservations, does it have that feel for you too?
It kind of does. I think that when you look at just the consensus from draft analysts, and obviously the league will always differentiate somewhat from what the media thinks. But right now, there's really only two guys who seem to be consensus early first round top 10 quarterbacks, and that's Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And I think that Shedeur, I think he kind of is the quintessential Raider. Now, obviously, there's a lot of teams that are looking for quarterbacks up near the top that might be interested in him or Cam Ward. But I think he would, we've talked about before, he knows Mark Davis. There is the Brady factor where I'm sure that Deion Sanders would be comfortable with his son going to a team where Tom Brady has some sphere of influence. Shedeur, I think when you see what he's done, where he's uplifted an offense and uplifted a program at Colorado. Obviously, yes, they do have some excellent skill talent around him, Travis Hunter and a couple of those other receivers. But the way it seems like guys sort of gravitate to him, he has a swagger about him. He has, a little flash to his game, a little flash to his persona. I think he fits well with what, the quintessential Raider is. So I don't want to say it's Shedeur or bust because that might be selling Cam Ward short. And again, we don't know exactly where the Raiders are going to be picking anyway. But I do think Shedeur is a great fit there, at least at this vantage point.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, I haven't even done 10% of the research I'm going to do, but just the more I'm exposed to his game, the more I find it interesting. Now, I don't know Shedeur. I've met him one time. I'm not a friend of Dion's, but I've met him several times, talked to him several times. I really like Dion. I had the privilege of getting to know Dion away from football. And so in some situations that were more on a personal level, nothing to do with football at all. And so for me, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective of Dion than some people. And I genuinely really like him and I respect him. He's an absolutely tremendous father. And I think that I'm I'm just saying that because it very well may be shaping my opinion. Um, but I again, I like what I see so far. All right, let's go in a little bit of a different direction. Daniel Jones, you're a Giants guy, so that is your bias. I'm not really anybody bias, but you are. But where do you think he ends up? Now, you guys at the Spund have been saying you think there's a leader. Who do you think it is?
It seems like it seems like a lot of there's been a bunch of different options thrown out. There's been a bunch of different things said. The Raiders were mentioned, and Jordan Schultz said the Raiders were out. I think that Jacina Anderson had been the person. I want to make sure I got it right. She said there was a leading choice, but she didn't mention who it was. I kind of think the best fits for him are Minnesota or Baltimore as a backup, because I think that with Baltimore, you're going to get to work within a similar type of offense. Well, not similar type of offense as the Giants, but an offense that fits what he can do well. Minnesota, you're fighting for a playoff spot. Again, both places he wouldn't come in and take reps, but by all accounts, he wants to be part of a team that's in a playoff contention, and I think it can work in that type of environment. As a quarterback, there's some things he does well, and then there's some things he's very limited with. He is a good athlete. He's a fast runner, not an overly quick player, and he's not great with creating, pocket space and having good feel there. But if you get him in space, he is fast. He can run past you, and he can run over you. He's 6'5", 240. He's very tough. He can take a hit. He can give a hit. So he helps you there. Accuracy and throwing, on time with the anticipation and reading defenses were never his biggest strengths, but I feel like they became bigger weaknesses the last year or two with the Giants than they had been earlier in his career. I don't know if that's a effect of the injuries. He's had some injuries towards ACL. Obviously, in 2023, he's had a couple of neck injuries. If it's bad offensive line play, a little bit of both. So now you have a guy who doesn't have the best internal clock to begin with, and now you screwed it up by some of the surroundings. I still think there's something there to be a really good high-end backup in the league with the potential for like a caretaker spot starter type for him. He was with the Giants for just short of 6 full seasons. I think if he wants to play and stays healthy, he can be in the league for at least that amount of time as a backup. He's only 27, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see where he signs and what, his second act is going to be, because his third act technically might be what gets him a chance to play more, because I'm not sure how much he played down the stretch on a contender.
So let me share a couple of things with you. When I talk to people around the league, now I'm not talking to management people about the draft, because anybody that understands the NFL, management people are focused on their team in the season. I talk to scouts about the draft. I don't talk to management people till after the year. But when I talk to management people about Daniel Jones, I hear 4 teams: Rams, Vikings, Buccaneers, and Ravens. Those are the 4 teams that I hear consistently that they're hearing. Daniel Jones to me is a quintessential. Now, you remember, because you and I have been friends for so long, when they picked Daniel Jones, I was very critical, and here's why. He wasn't the most experienced guy. He had some good resume, but it wasn't a ton of experience. This is one reason with Shedeur, Bill Parcells laid out what you're looking for in an NFL quarterback when you draft them, and everyone seems to go away from it. But I think they drafted him too early. So expectations for the fan base was unrealistic. And just like with Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, these guys are young. The fan base turns on them quickly. They go somewhere else, they mature, and then bam, they're pretty good quarterbacks. Hey, there's a lot of people right now that would love to have Baker Mayfield. There are a lot of people right now that would love to have Sam Darnold. And I think with Daniel Jones, I don't know if he can be a QB1. I think there's a chance he can, but so much expectation on him that in today's modern NFL, guys don't get the chance to grow and mature. This is why I hammer this every year. You got players that I'll give you an example. Caleb Williams. I heard from a lot of NFL people. He's the most talented guy in this draft, and he's got the most red flags in this draft. I had guys who were proven drafters say to me, I would not take Caleb till the 3rd round. I think he could be great, but he's got to grow. He's got to mature. He's got to go through some stuff. But if you pick him 1 overall, now you see there are Bears fans ready to get rid of him, calling him a bust. I mean, look at Tennessee. Malik Willis, do you really think he's as bad as they think he is? Will Levis, and now they want to go pick a 3rd first rounder when there's no Aiden O'Connell. Okay, Aiden O'Connell was a 4th rounder who had to play early, so expectations grew exponentially. I don't think Aiden right now today is a QB1 in the NFL. I think that's pretty clear. I don't know if he can become one, although I think he has those attributes. But you got to give guys room to grow. You got to, and this is where Tom Brady talks about it benefited him. He sat the bench at Michigan. It benefited him. He sat the bench at the Patriots. There's such a get them in quick, and if they don't work, get rid of them and go on to the next one mentality. I think we're throwing away good guys. Do you think that's where we sit with Daniel Jones?
I disagree in one aspect. I think he got a lot of it rope in New York. I mean, he got 5.5 years as almost the unquestioned starter with middling play. His best was in 2022 when they made the playoffs. Right. That was really just kind of Brian Dable managing what he did well against what he doesn't do well. And, they were able to thread the needle, and they also had Saquon Barkley, and the run game was really good. And like I said, Jones is a very good runner, so that was his best year as a runner. The one thing I will say I agree with you on is I think that he was drafted too early, and I think drafting him too early put him behind the 8 ball immediately in New York, because at that point, fans wanted a new quarterback because Eli was coming to the end physically. And here's, Daniel Jones the year before, a lot of fans wanted, when they took Barkley, a lot of fans wanted Sam Darnold or Rosen or whoever was coming out that they could have taken there. And they didn't take a quarterback. Now they're kind of pigeonholed into taking one in a weaker draft class. And they kind of forced it with Daniel Jones. They wanted, now the worst kept secret is they really, really, really wanted Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert at the last second, after Dave Gettleman had scouted him intently, decided, I want to go back and play with my brother one more year at Oregon. So I think what happened was they forced Daniel Jones from day one. A large majority of the fan base, myself included, did not like the pick. So that already puts the kid behind the 8 ball when he comes in.
You were so mad.
I was, it's one of the maddest I've ever been as a fan. Now, listen, I gave him a fair shot because I wanted to be wrong, because you obviously want the guy to play well and your team to be good. And there were a couple of flashes very early in his first year where I was like, oh, maybe people got it. Maybe this kid has more than they thought. But it turns out, at the end of the day, there were only just a few glimpses or a couple of, here and there showings of good play, and most of it wasn't just wasn't good enough. But I think in general, so I don't necessarily think that Daniel Jones didn't get enough of an opportunity with the Giants. I think maybe he almost got too much in some ways, but I think in general, you're on point with quarterbacks.
Can I explain to you what I mean by that? Because when you just look at the amount of years he played, you're absolutely right. But where I feel like maybe my communicative skills were not succinct enough, I don't think that the Giants had a staff that could develop a quarterback.
That's
And
fair.
so when you throw a guy in there, it's not just about playing. You've got to have a quarterback coach. Like, I'm going to give you an example. Bo Hardegree comes in as the interim OC last year after Josh McDaniels get fired. Okay, he's never been that. But what Bo Hardegree was a successful SEC quarterback. And you saw Aiden O'Connell get better last year with Bo Hardegree. So then they move him out, they bring in a new guy, and none of the Raiders quarter. In fact, Gardner and him went backwards. Okay, and again, my communicative skills not being succinct enough. My point is, if you bring a guy in, I was told this yesterday. In fact, let me read you a text. This is from an NFL executive that I was talking to about Daniel Jones. This is what he said. I believe, and my track record would show it, picking the right quarterback is only half of it. Having the coach to develop them is the other half. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that have been thrown on the trash heap that if they had the right developer could have really been something. Here's my thought. The most underpaid position in the NFL is the quarterback coach. That to me was a huge thought process there.
I think that's definitely a good point. If you look at Daniel Jones, he came in under Pat Shurmur his rookie year, who got him to put up yardage and touchdowns. A friend.
I think Pat did good for him year one.
Yes, Pat.
You saw some things.
He did. He still had a lot of turnovers, fumbles especially, but you did see he was able to put the ball in the end zone, make some plays downfield. Shurmur, I thought, did a pretty good job with him for year one.
I did too.
But then Shurmur gets fired, and now Joe Judge comes in, and Joe Judge doesn't have an offensive background, and you have Jason Garrett as the OC, and then it became a completely kind of different approach where they were very conservative with him. They wanted to eliminate the turnovers, so it went totally in the other direction. So that was for 2 years, and actually Jason Garrett got fired in the middle of that second season. Now Dable comes in his fourth year, and that's when he had his best season as a pro, and that's when the Giants had the best season since he was there. But they didn't do it. That team was a fun team, and they had a solid year, got to the divisional round, won a playoff game, but they did a lot of it with smoke and mirrors. The infrastructure wasn't really there to be a contending team long term, and you saw it last year when they come out and get smoked in the first few weeks by good teams, and they finish 6-11. Now, by this year, he was a broken player. He was just there. I mean, and we're talking about there were things. Yeah, people criticize. Yeah, he's really a one-read quarterback. He locks on his first read. Well, there were times this year his first read was open and he wasn't pulling the trigger, or he was missing guys by so much where you could just tell he wasn't confident. He didn't feel, right. There was a report last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, from Jordan Raanan of ESPN saying how one of the issues you saw in the summer and the offseason with Daniel Jones is he was underthrowing balls downfield. Was that because he had the ACL tear last year or the neck injuries? I don't know. But then he started overcompensating and he was, overthrowing then. So it seems like he just wasn't – he was a broken QB. I think he's going to have a long, successful run here as a backup spot start guy, and it wouldn't stun me if in a better situation, has a few weeks or a little stretch of sustained solid play, because it's a better fit for him.
Mahomes is 1 win away from his 100th career win. Man, if you are the Raiders, I mean, I don't think this team needs any more motivation. I mean, they may not just be good enough, but they're battered and beat up. But that's just another big man. You don't want Mahomes running off the field with the football of his 100th win against you.
No. And I mean, this is the Raiders Super Bowl at this point. This is a really big motivation, national TV. Or I don't know, is the game being streamed, but it's still a national audience. I lose track of where all these games are on, but it's a big opportunity to put some stuff out there for a standalone game to come up big and pull off the upset. The Chiefs, it's a weird team, man. They are so good. Mahomes is, I still think, the best quarterback in the league, even if maybe Josh Allen and Lamar have had better seasons. But KC, they just win games. They don't necessarily look good doing it all the time. A lot of times they don't look that good doing it, but they win games. And if you look back at their last two playoff runs, I think every game they've won, I think 7 games in the last 2 years to win 2 Super Bowls. And I think 6 of them by 1 score or less. So that's what they do in the playoffs.
Yep. All right. We have 1 minute. 2 quick questions.
Sure.
Jerry Jones says, hey, it may not be absurd to think about extending Mike McCarthy. Michael Irvin calls it crazy. Your thoughts? Quick. We got 2 questions. That's 1.
I lean to Michael Irvin. I just don't see Jerry Jones doing that. Mike McCarthy's done, I believe, barring something crazy happening down the stretch.
We're looking at a potential snowstorm. 49ers Bills on Sunday.
Love it.
Football is for real when you see snowstorms, isn't it?
I love it. I know guys that have played the game at high levels say that it's better to play when it's 50 degrees and sunny. They don't love the snow. They don't love the cold and wet. But from a fan's perspective, selfishly, it looks cool. It looks so cool.
It does look. All right, my plane got delayed, so I am literally flying in Friday morning for the Black Friday game, and then I'm heading up north to spend Thanksgiving with the fam. We're going to do a late one, but man, I appreciate you so much. I'm grateful for you. You are a dear friend. Happy Thanksgiving to you, brother. Tell everybody, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter, X, at Matt Hladik, at 919, at MATTHLADIK 919. And I already have a lot of people on there following me. Big game this weekend, Rutgers and Michigan State in the Big Ten. So that'll be fun.
From the banks of the Red Cedar. Man, Michigan State's got to get that game, baby.
Playing for a bowl eligibility for the Spartans. So, listen, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Happy Thanksgiving to Raider Nation. And everybody, thanks for tuning in.
All right, see you tomorrow, everybody.